Hello, my friend, and welcome back to my channel. Ellen here, and I am a burnout and stress management coach. And on this channel, we talk about all things productivity, self-care, and obviously burnout and stress management. And today, the big thing that we're going to be talking about is for all of you business owners out there. How can you go about creating content in a way that doesn't burn you out, doesn't overwhelm you, is something that you can actually sustain and maintain, which I think is one of the big things that a lot of people don't think about when they come up with their content creation strategy. They don't ask themselves, is this sustainable? Is this something that I can maintain even in my busiest times in my business? So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. As usual, I have a companion blog that goes along with this, and I'm also going to be in this video going through some strategies for how I manage my content, how I manage my ideas, my workflows, etc. So you will get a sneak peek to that inside of this video. To kick things off though, let's go ahead and start with some of my biggest tips for how we can go about content creation without burnout. Tip number one is to really decide what your priorities are. And what I mean by this is twofold. Really, what it comes down to is deciding what you're going to focus on in terms of your platforms. I think a big thing I see a lot of people do wrong is they try to do too much too soon. You are not going to be able to be on every single platform from the get-go. It's just not going to be possible. So it's really important for us to kind of be strategic and make very, very intentional decisions about what the priorities are in terms of the places that we want to show up. It's easy for somebody like Gary Vee or whatever other marketing guru to tell you you need to post XYZ times a day on all of these different platforms. But the bottom line is they probably have teams, and a lot of us don't. I am a one-woman show. You're probably a one-woman show. We are doing all of this on our own. So we need to have systems, and we need to have a certain amount of stuff on our plate that is manageable for us. So step one and tip one is to really decide what your priorities are in terms of the platforms you want to show up on. So which platforms are priorities for you? I have never recommended any solopreneur, new or tenured, it really doesn't matter how long you've been in business, to be on all marketing platforms and social media platforms. It's just too freaking overwhelming. So really is about deciding what platforms are necessary for you. I recommend first and foremost having one of your main platforms be something that is searchable. YouTube, Pinterest, blogs are great because they're great for SEO on your website to make your website more searchable for Google. Even podcasts to some extent. All of those types of content creation are searchable, and perhaps more importantly, they live longer online. Things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, yeah, your post is going to be up, but your post really doesn't have a long life in terms of how relevant it is going to be for people to see it. People don't really search Instagram or Twitter for particular content. Yeah, we might use hashtag to an extent, but when it comes to places like YouTube, people go on YouTube searching for specific things, and that can be used to our advantage in terms of our content creation because it gives our content more life. So that would be step one, is decide which searchable platforms is going to be your main platform. I personally, as of lately, have been focusing on YouTube, blogs, and podcasts. Now that's 3 platforms. I'm going to tell you why I am now able to focus on 3 main platforms in a later tip. So TBD on that one. As for other social networks, things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, like I mentioned, the life of your content isn't as long on those platforms. So I kind of recommend thinking of those as sort of secondary platforms, secondary focuses. And really with those, it's a matter of asking yourself, where are your people going to be at online? Are they more on Twitter? Are they more on Instagram? Are they more on Facebook? If you have an older demographic that you're targeting, perhaps they're more on Facebook. Younger, maybe they're on Snapchat or TikTok. All of those things are things that are important to take into consideration. How I've kind of rationalized it for myself is I've actually been joking for years that my people show up on LinkedIn for work, but they kill time and they use Instagram and TikTok for joy. I use Instagram a lot more than TikTok. I'm still kind of trying to get into TikTok, but that's kind of always been my rationalization and why those have been the 2 secondary platforms I focused on. The second big thing to decide on when it comes to deciding what your priorities are is your posting schedule. And this actually dovetails into my next tip, which is to commit to a schedule that you can actually maintain. Now, something I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video is I will fully acknowledge I am not a marketer. I am coming at this from the lens of somebody who is a burnout and stress management coach. So a lot of my tips might run contrary to what marketers will tell you. I'm not even gonna try to downplay that. That's probably exactly what's gonna happen with this. No more so than this particular tip. Because a marketer might tell you it's better for you to post more. If you want to grow faster, you're going to need to post more. And I'm not arguing with that. That is true. If you want to grow faster, you're going to need to post more. However, I am a firm believer that the content schedule that you should follow is the content schedule that you can actually maintain. That's my stance on it. I think consistency and, over delivering on your schedule as opposed to under delivering on your schedule is a more important route to go on when it comes to your content schedule and how frequently you're going to show up for your people. The biggest marketing guru in the world might tell you to show up on Instagram, post daily and post on Twitter 5 times a day or whatever it might be, but they're not running your business. They're not creating your content. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but it kind of doesn't matter what they say. Again, your content schedule that you should have is the content schedule that you can maintain. I think that's the most important piece. To give you an example, I actually relaunched my podcast about 6 or 8 months ago. I rebranded it, I renamed it, it was a whole thing. But it was about 6 or 8 months ago at this point, and the trailer explicitly says that it's a monthly podcast. And I did that very, very intentionally. I've currently been releasing new content about every week on the podcast. But my thought is, and I still am very glad that I intentionally said that, is because when I am in my busy seasons, when my business gets busy, when my day job gets busy, when I just have things going on or I'm not at my best, I only need to post monthly. That's the minimum that I need to post, and I can do that no matter what season I'm in. If I am in a season where I have more time, then I can take advantage of that and I can post even more frequently than that. And that's kind of the stage I'm in right now. So that might be another way to think about your posting schedule is what is the minimum that you can maintain? If you go beyond that, awesome. But what's the minimum that you can maintain? That's the content schedule you should stick to. Tip number 3 is to keep a running list of ideas. And this is actually where I'm gonna go ahead and get into some of my systems. So here we are inside of my Notion systems here. This is my planner, and you can see inside of my planner, I have projects. Now I got this planner set up. I've kind of personalized it since I got it initially, but this planner setup I initially got from, I think his name is, Thomas Frank Explains, is his YouTube channel. And I purchased the planner that I'm using and the planner template that I'm using from him. And one of my projects inside of this planner is my content calendar. So let me show you what that looks like. Inside of this content calendar, I have a little bit of kind of background information. I have this project overview, which I really haven't filled in. I have my content strategy, kind of the different pillars that I post on, my main platform, my secondary platforms, and my rough content calendar plan. I will tell you right now, I don't abide this very closely. But the big thing that I want you to pay attention to in here is all of the different content ideas. I am literally constantly adding to this. I will be out on a walk. I will be working on something else and I'll have a random idea for content. And I am just constantly adding different ideas to this. And I have them organized in a couple different ways. I have them organized by the way in which I might deliver that content. Is it going to be posted in my free circle community on LinkedIn or Instagram? Is it going to go on my LinkedIn newsletter? This was a random idea I had because I was feeling very burned out by LinkedIn. There are just so many requests and whatnot that come in on LinkedIn of people saying, hey, connect with me, let's set up a call. And it was exhausting for me. So that might be something that, I don't know, maybe you can relate to that. But I just will randomly come up with these different ideas, and I will either organize them as I'm coming up with them by the platform they're going to be on, or more often than not, I organize them by the pillar. So I have ones that are career related, behind the scenes related, just general burnout and stress, ones that are more self-care or productivity related. I have ones that I haven't organized yet. So actually these are all ones that I added recently, just kind of offhandedly, when I was out on a walk, when I was just kind of cleaning around my house, I would come up with these ideas. So these haven't actually been sorted into topics yet. But this is exactly what I mean by creating a system for yourself and keeping a list so that you can just constantly add to things if you are coming up with ideas. Now, you might find that you are really, really struggling coming up with content ideas. And if that is you, if that is something you are experiencing, I have a couple different recommendations. First and foremost, perhaps what you can do is you can just look to people in your niche for inspiration. Now, just look to them for inspiration. Nobody wants a copycat, and it's probably not going to come across in the same way if you just repost the exact same content. I will totally acknowledge, and I'm sure every entrepreneur has done this at some point in time. I've done that in the past of just kind of being like, oh, I like this quote, I'm going to post it too. Or recording like almost the exact same reel, and it never works out the way you want it to, and it just feels really inauthentic. And I think inauthenticity can burn you out just like anything. Another thing that you can actually do is that you can just make some more space in your day. A lot of times we get stuck and we can't think of any ideas. It's almost like content creation and not coming up with ideas is almost like a form of writer's block in a sense. And that's kind of what we're experiencing, is we're experiencing a block in us being able to come up with new ideas. And the reason why we're experiencing that is because we just don't have enough white space. Too many of us have lives that are like bumper to bumper. We have a meeting, then we have to move on to the next thing. We don't have any space in our lives where our brains can just wander. We're going from one thing to the next to the next. White space is really, really important for creativity and coming up with those different ideas. So making that white space is really important. You probably already heard me mention this. I do that a lot with walks. If I'm really stuck coming up with some ideas, I will go for a walk, and it usually gets me unstuck. Another tool you can use is Answer the Public. I am on answerthepublic.com right now, and how this works, I can actually show you from my niche, is it basically tells you what people are searching for on the particular topic that you are looking for. So like I said, I do burnout and stress. I always search burnout, so I'm going to search stress this time. And you'll see it's going to populate what people are searching for. So can stress cause vertigo? Can stress cause diarrhea? What stress does to your body, what stress does to your brain, what stress feels like, why is stress bad, are stress and anxiety the same thing? So it gives you some ideas of what people are searching for. And it keeps going. Like there's all sorts of different branches that you could go into. Stress can delay periods, stress can cause high blood pressure, stress for no reason, stress for exams. So this is another great way to come up with content, because this is literally what people are searching for. But another way you can do this is to literally just type in some search terms into Google and see what it populates. So I actually did this the other day. Yeah, this is actually one of the things I searched the other day, how to in your business without burning out. I was kind of trying to see what that would get filled in with, how to blank in your business without burning out. And so I just searched that and looked at what some of the titles were. And I actually have a couple of these saved over here. Top sources of burnout for solopreneurs. So the secret cause of burnout, what makes entrepreneurs burn out, just to give me some ideas for different types of content that I might be able to create. How to burn out at work. You could kind of see how to burn out at work. You can kind of see, there, this is a better example of some of the things that people are searching for. How to avoid burnout at work, how to overcome burnout at work, you could also do how to burn out job, how to avoid job burnout, how to reduce job burnout. There was also one that how to burn out boss was another thing that I searched recently. And you can see there's how to talk to your boss about burnout, how to explain burnout to your boss, how to get out of burnout at work, how do I tell my boss I'm burned out. So these are all things that people have searched that can give you some ideas for how to create content. So this is all a way in which you can kind of do yourself a favor so that you have all sorts of different things when you do sit down to create your content. You have all sorts of different ideas that you can pull from. So keep that running list, add things to it whenever you think of them, and then you can use Google, Answer the Public, or just other resources as inspiration when you're really, really stuck. Last but not least, when it comes to how to create content without burning out, come up with a workflow. This is kind of a more advanced strategy for somebody who isn't necessarily a new solopreneur or entrepreneur, or perhaps they have a little bit of help. This is the strategy you ultimately want to go for, because it's really not just about having a workflow, it's also having a workflow that allows you to repurpose your content. This is something that I will admit I didn't do for a really long time in my business, but now I've gotten to the point where I can release a YouTube video, a blog, and a podcast all in the same week because they're all on the same theme. And I'll actually show you a little bit of how I do this. So how I go about creating workflows is, first and foremost, I have them built into my Notion. So for example, whenever I go in here, and let's say I'm actually going to go back over to platform. Let's say I want to write something about boundaries when you feel guilty. So I'll go in and I'll click on this, and you can see, ignore all of these 80 bajillion properties up here. You can see I have these different things down here. And what these are, again, this is something that came with the Thomas Frank Explains Notion Planner template that I use. But you have these different templates down here, and you can create a new template by clicking this button. But basically, I have my templates set up into different workflows. A workflow for my blog / podcast / YouTube creation, because I do it all in the same thing, and a blog and a workflow for other content that I create. But let's take a look at this one, because this is the one that is really how I create content for the most part. So once it populates in here, it's gonna give me a place to input tasks and assign due dates and priorities. But really right here, this is the workflow. This is what I do each time I create a new piece of content. And I space these tasks out over the span of like 10 days before the blog or podcast is gonna go live. So I start 10 days before by just outlining what I wanna talk about. Then the next step I do is I write the blog post using that outline. And let me actually show you what this looks like, because this is actually what I'm working off of for this one right now. So I had an outline for this podcast. I wrote out the blog, and I like doing this first because it kind of helps me hit the talking points that I want to address in the actual YouTube video, the actual podcast, etc. But I will go in and I will write out the entire blog so that I have those talking points in my head when I go to record the YouTube video or when I go to record the podcast. So I do that. Then I will outline any announcements or advertisements that I want to have at the start of my podcast. I don't usually do that on YouTube. Maybe I will eventually, but I do that for my podcast. I'll outline whatever announcements I want to make at the beginning of the episode. Then I will go in and I will record the podcast and the YouTube video simultaneously. That's this step right here. You can actually see I am recording on Audacity as I am recording this video for YouTube. So I am multi-purposing my content in my podcast and while I'm recording the YouTube. So I don't have to do it multiple times. It saves me time. So then the next step is to create Canva graphics for my blog, podcast, and YouTube, show notes, edit, schedule, and then a couple things that I do on the day where the podcast actually goes live. Another thing that I do with this workflow is I strategically schedule the activities that are a little bit lower focus or a little bit less time intensive onto the days where I have less going on. So like scheduling, making my podcast pages, creating Canva graphics. I have templates, and it's very, very easy for me to do those things so that I can bust out a Canva template or a Canva graphic really, really quickly for my podcast or my blog. So I'm very strategic about where I schedule those things so that I'm not asking myself to record a podcast or a YouTube video on one of my busiest days, because I do have a day job as well still while I do this work. So those are my 4 tips when it comes to creating content in your business without burning yourself out. First and foremost, decide what your priorities are. Decide what platforms you're going to start with. Is it YouTube? Is it a podcast? Build up to a workflow like mine. Don't start there. Just pick your couple platforms. Maybe it's YouTube and Instagram, and go from there. The next tip is decide on the posting schedule that you can maintain. It does not matter what the gurus tell you if you can't consistently maintain that. Because if you tell your people, I'm going to post a weekly podcast, and then you can't keep up with that, or you're just creating really crappy content for the sake of staying with your schedule. Nobody wants that. So tip number 3 is then to keep a running to-do list of ideas so that when you go to create content, you're not grasping at straws trying to figure out what's going to be good content for you to share. Use Answer the Public, use Google so that you can look for the things that people are actually searching for. And then last but not least, create workflows. That's kind of the 400 level version of content creation. If you are finding that you are newer, don't worry about the workflow step until later. But if you are more experienced, create a workflow so that you can repurpose your content, kind of like I gave you some ideas of for me, so you can repurpose your content and share it on multiple platforms so you get as many people engaged as possible. With that, that is all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. If you want any of the templates, the workflows, any of the ideas that I have, let me know in the comments and I can share those with you. But all of the resources that I mentioned in this will be linked in the companion blog post down below, as well as in the description. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you are liking what you are hearing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, or leave a comment and tell me what your favorite tip is. If you've got anything to add, drop a comment with that as well. But other than that, thanks so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye.